Here's a question for you. What is the most important part of a sentence? If you said the intero-bang, then you may be shocked to find out that you're wrong. You also might have some questions about it. The answer to this question is the verb. The verb is the most important part of any sentence. This is maybe something you haven't given a lot of thought to, but when you sit down and think about it, you'll realize that the verb is one of the few parts of a sentence where the writer has any real control. It's one of the few areas where you have a lot of choice in what word to use, and what choice you make is going to radically alter what the sentence does. With other parts of the sentence, when you think about it, you really don't have a lot of choice. Nouns are pretty much set in stone. Things are called what they're called. Yes, you can choose the name of your characters and the name of the towns and those sorts of things, but once you make that choice, you're pretty much locked in. I can call Duncan, Duncan, or the cat, or the lazy feline, but that's pretty much it. Straying too far from those names is going to cause problems. And going beyond a few different ways to refer to him is going to make it confusing for the reader. Now, you do have a lot of control over the structure of your sentence, how things are arranged, whether there's semicolons, commas, conjunctions, that sort of thing. This is probably the second most important part of a sentence. Some might argue it's the most important, but I wrote an entire script about verbs, so... As I mentioned at the beginning, verbs are one of the few parts of a sentence where you genuinely have a lot of control over what word you use. If you're talking about a character walking across a room, then there's dozens of different verbs you can use to describe this, and each way will invoke a different image in your reader's mind. When you think about it, most of what your readers see in your story is going to be communicated through verbs. Every event, every action a character makes is described almost exclusively through the verbs that you use. Sure, you have your physical descriptions of the characters and the setting, and you also have dialogue, but really when it comes down to a lot of the heavy story-related lifting, it's the verbs that do it. Which is a little scary when you think about it. What if I'm not good at choosing verbs, or selecting them, or determining them? Does this mean I'm destined to be a failure as a writer? Have I been wasting my life? I can't answer that. Those sorts of existential questions tend to go beyond the scope of these videos. What I can do is share with you some tips on how to choose the right verbs. Select, determine, elect the right verbs. First, you want to use strong verbs whenever possible. You'll often see this advice framed as avoiding adverbs. It's not that adverbs are necessarily bad. There's times when they can be quite useful and effective. However, a lot of the time when you want to use an adverb, it's because the verb that you've chosen is not strong enough to convey what it is you want to convey. Anytime you're tempted to use an adverb, ask yourself whether you're adding strength to an already strong verb, or if you're compensating for a weak verb. If your verb is weak, try and find a stronger one, or make it do some sit-ups or something, I don't know. Next, avoid the use of ING verbs whenever possible. This advice basically comes down to active versus passive voice. A lot of the times when you're using an ING verb, what you're writing is going to tend to be more passive. Now, passive voice isn't necessarily a bad thing. In the hands of a skilled writer and applied at the right time and place, the passive voice can be an effective tool. That said, if you don't know how to use passive voice effectively, it's best to avoid it. Besides their passivity, ING verbs also aren't as pretty as other verbs. So it's best to avoid them whenever possible. Lastly, whenever possible, try and use verbs that contribute to characterization. If you can use strong verbs that paint a really good picture for the reader, that also tell them things about the character they're reading about, then that's some good writing. How people walk, speak, fight is going to vary from person to person. Describing these actions in ways that are unique to each character will help to solidify who these characters are in your reader's mind. The great thing about adding characterization this way is you get it without having to spend extra words. You already need to describe what the character is doing, so this is just a bonus. So remember to make the verb strong, but also personal. I hope you found the advice in this video useful. If you want to see more of this, please like and subscribe to my channel. I post new writing advice videos every Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.